I made a light-hearted remark about being intimate with his closest companion. At this point, he is initiating separation proceedings and presenting it as evidence. Everything began with a playful quip. It was one of those foolish, ironic statements that escape your lips when irritation builds, and you seek some kind of response from the other person. I never intended it seriously, not even for an instant. Yet, there are occasions when a single thoughtless instance can dismantle all that you believed was solidly secure. My spouse, Ryan, and I had shared 5 years in matrimony. Our bond was far from flawless. Whose ever is. Nevertheless, we held deep affection for one another. Or so I believed in my heart. In recent times, strains have become more apparent. We engaged in disputes with greater frequency, primarily concerning trivial matters that held little significance. The initial passion that once connected us had diminished into a subdued daily pattern, and I started to sense my own invisibility within the home. Ryan maintained a profound friendship with Adam, a connection that dated in college days, forged through shared secrets, extended conversations into the night, and an enduring foundation of mutual reliance. Adam frequently appeared in our lives, particularly during periods when Ryan and I experienced difficulties. He would deliver humorous remarks, elicit laughter from me, and for brief intervals, I could set aside the emotional gap that had grown with my partner. I must confess, the focus he directed toward me was appealing. It wasn't rooted in romance, but rather in the reassurance that another individual still acknowledged my presence. Ryan conversely appeared entirely unaware. I might have changed my appearance dramatically or paraded in an outlandish outfit, and he likely would not have glanced away from his device. On a particular evening, we gathered for an intimate meal with a handful of acquaintances, Adam among them. Beverages were poured generously. The banter grew more animated than typical, and I felt a surge of confidence, or perhaps impulsiveness. An individual offered a playful observation regarding Adam's proximity to our couple, and without pausing to consider, I grinned and uttered, "Perhaps I ought to share a bed with Adam to determine if he surpasses you." The group erupted in amusement save for Ryan. His expression solidified into stillness. The merriment at the gathering dissipated into discomfort. Adam let out an uneasy laugh and remarked, "Well, that signals my need to replenish the glasses," prior to departing swiftly. I attempted to dismiss it casually, waving it off with, "Come on, it's merely humor." However, Ryan avoided my gaze entirely. His muscles in his face tensed, and he passed the remainder of the night contributing scarcely a syllable. Upon returning to our residence, I anticipated an outburst, raised voices or a heated exchange, but none occurred. Rather, he proceeded directly to the sleeping area, retrieved a cover, and settled on the living room furniture for the night. The quiet that ensued in the subsequent days proved excruciating. He communicated with me minimally, seldom meeting my eyes. Each effort I made to clarify matters was met with his simple declaration, "You overstepped boundaries." I failed to comprehend how one isolated jest could disturb him to such an extent. I convinced myself that his temper would eventually subside. Yet it did not. Then, 7 days afterward, the situation detonated. I arrived back from my employment to discover Ryan positioned at the dining surface, accompanied by a collection of documents and in demeanor that caused my insides to twist. "We must converse," he stated in a subdued tone. He passed the stack to me. "Documents for ending our marriage?" I stood motionless. "Ryan, what does this mean? This cannot be genuine." He responded evenly, "I have reached my limit. You caused me profound embarrassment. You portrayed me as ridiculous before my dearest companion. Can you fathom the impact of that?" I endeavored to elucidate that it was nothing more than banter, born from momentary annoyance, utterly devoid of intent, but he refused to listen. His decision was firm. It transcended the mere quip. He elaborated. "It encompasses the entirety. Your growing detachment, the manner in which your eyes linger on him, the tone you employ in his presence. You might perceive it as innocent, yet it is far from that. You have been obscuring distinctions for an extended period." His statement struck me with a chilling force. I yearned to refute them, but inwardly, I recognized a fragment of validity in his accusations. I had indeed muddled those boundaries, albeit not in a tangible sense but through feelings. I had relied on Adam's regard to occupy the emptiness Ryan had created. But I never engaged in physical relations with him, I pleaded urgently. Ryan's countenance remained unaltered. Physical action was unnecessary. The surrounding circle believes it occurred. His assessment was accurate. Following that gathering, the remark circulated rapidly within our social network. Individuals murmured regarding it, chuckled over it, pondered possibilities. A few even began to jest that my words might have held truth. The more I attempted to vindicate my position, the more culpable I appeared. The most agonizing aspect was Adam's complete withdrawal. He ceased visiting, ignored my messages and attempts to reach him. Presumably, he wished to avoid entanglement. Or perhaps he preferred not to confront Ryan. In any case, the absence of communication from both inflicted deep pain. I believed circumstances could not deteriorate further until Ryan's legal representative reached out. He was genuinely proceeding with the dissolution, referencing emotional unfaithfulness and overt degradation in public. The individual I cherished, the one I assumed would pardon any misstep, was transforming our shared existence into a courtroom confrontation. I implored him for dialogue, for an opportunity to rectify the damage. "You are discarding our whole world because of a jest," I wept. He regarded me with eyes that were detached and fatigued. "No," he murmured softly. "You discarded it the instant you positioned me as the object of ridicule." In that instant, comprehension dawned that the issue extended beyond the quip alone. It symbolized accumulated issues. It was not simply an inadvertent utterance. It marked the peak of prolonged bitterness, unexpressed fury, and a widening sentimental chasm. I had converted our challenges into comedy rather than addressing them directly. And currently I bore the consequences. The separation concluded more swiftly than I had foreseen. He vacated the premises, ceased responding to my communications, erased any recognition of my being. One moment he was my life partner and the next he had vanished. The mutual companions we once enjoyed aligned predominantly with him. Society thrives on spectacle. Shortly thereafter, I was branded as the disloyal spouse. Despite never having violated physically, it was irrelevant. To all observers, appearance defined truth. I forfeited my union due to a single imprudent phrase. An idiotic, biting comment uttered in exasperation. However, in reality, that comment merely exposed the fractures that pre-existed in our connection. I had experienced neglect, a lack of affection. Rather than extending myself toward him, I struck out. My desire was for him to perceive me, and he did, albeit in a manner contrary to my hopes. At present, several months onward, I reside in solitude. I retain the identical surface where the incident unfolded, the vacant seating area he once occupied, and whenever my gaze falls upon it, I auditory replay my statements from that evening. The joy, the beverages, the irreversible expressions. At times, absence persists far beyond any dispute. I bantered about intimacy with his closest ally. Yet, fundamentally, my aim was to recapture my partner's focus. I presumed a touch of envy might intensify his devotion. In contrast, it prompted his permanent departure. Currently, reflecting on that occasion fills me with profound regret. Affection does not perish solely through disloyalty. Occasionally it fades due to negligence. And in my case, it ended with a quip that was never intended as amusement.